Okay, we're talking about supply chain modeling, and we will start with the first part, which introduction to supply chain modeling, in which this course was designed, well, basically for graduate students, where the content of this course were mostly adapted by the book entitled Supply Chain Logistics Management, which written by Donald Bowerstocks, David Kloss, and um, Bixby, right? So in 2019. So basically, we will use that book as the main reference. However, we will also combine the material with several other resources which may relate it to the discussion that being the part of the contents of the particular sessions. Okay, so let's just start by um, let you know that for the first session we will discuss like 8 part of the uh, talks, which consists of supply chain evolutions, and then we will talk about supply chain model and applications, supply chain value proposition, supply chain information and technology, and then in particular we will discuss a little bit about how logistics are our logistics activities uh, were taking part as the supply chain management, and we also will see how what kind of activities in more details about logistics, so we call here the works of logistics. And also, well, by the end of the day, what we're going to aim on doing good supply chain management is to accommodate the customer request or demand, so we will also discuss about that. uh, at the end of the session, we will also discuss about how engineer do the activity, or how what kind of approach engineer are using to plan and design the decision that were made by them. So this will be correlated with several problems that we are going to discuss later on about supply chain and logistics. This part contribute to the course outcome, which belong to these two course outcome. So by the end of the sessions, that at the end of the course, we will expect that this session will provide the ability for student to able to have these two course outcomes. So to talk about supply chain, I will like to start with an illustration or an examples. So let's say a common product such as sugar that you or me or we may use daily. So when we think about the journey of the sugar, it may gone through many process and activities before it finally consumed by the so-called end customer like me and you. So um, first, a products, or like in this case sugars, it might be produced somewhere in a factory, sugar factory, or which the activities happen in that factories might process the raw materials of sugar, such as sugar cane, and process with some other stuff to become the end products that we are all enjoy. In addition, the activities in the factory might also include several others in uh, um, like packaging and labeling. So factory commonly not producing their own raw materials, but even so they will also ask some other party or organizations to help them provide the raw materials. It is normally involves suppliers or other organization or other company to provide the raw materials. For examples, sugar cane in this case, the main raw material for sugar, is supplied by the farmers, for example. So factories might need not only one type of materials before uh, they produce their product, right? So many suppliers might involve. So for this case, we just give one example, but in practice, actually, the suppliers might have a lot of more than this only one examples, and those supplier also need another supplier, so it might contribute to supply networks. And after it's done, it's normally that we are not directly buying our sugar from the manufacturer or from the factory. Instead, the manufacturer will sell it to their, or to send the product to their distributors. So distributors then also uh, yeah, they buy it a large amount of amount of the end product. So normally we will not also directly buy it from them. Instead, the distributors normally will sell to a supermarket or smaller store, in which in supply chain we normally denote that as a retailer. And then all those long process, then products will finally ends up to us when you and I go to the supermarket, go to the small retailer store like 7-Eleven or other stuff, to ends up buying those for our end consumption, which we will not sell again to other parties. So that why we were called as the end customers. So basically, if we talk about this complex process, we can categorize there is three main flows were involved or need to be managed well in order it ends up in our hands in a correct amount, correct quality, and the correct price. So which can be categorized into flows of products, the physical product itself, and then the flow of money, because we use money to as the uh, in exchange to the products that we get, and then also flow of information such as uh, where does it located, how many, and stuff. So basically those are the illustrations of supply chain management. In particular, for this one, it's very simplified examples of supply chain of sugar. Okay, the evolution of supply chain over the years was highly dependent on the technological evolution, customer need, and as well as the current market requirements. In earlier days, supply chain management is also known as the material management and physical distributions, in which the activities that belongs to this or materials management and physical distributions are the demand forecasting, purchasing, requirement planning, manufacturing, production planning, manufacturing and inventory, also the warehousing, material handling, packaging, uh, inventory, distribution planning, and stuff. And those two combined later on known as the logistics management. And then if we combine that with strategic planning, information services, marketing and sales, and finance, those activities are then we known as the supply chain management. Okay, we understand that supply chain management can be implemented in various different ways in each industry. So if we can make a generic concept of the organization involved in the supply chain, we can illustrate it as follows. Perhaps we can take consider our company in the middles of the chains, and each company may have the suppliers, the first tier, second tier, third tier suppliers, and as well as their customer, in which who will consume the products that you generates. So it can be the first layer supplier. If you are a manufacturer, that it can be the distributor, or the second layer and the third layers. And the customer that doesn't have to another chain after that customer can also be called the end customer. Okay, as you can see here, if you position yourself, your company in the middle, those will be the generic picture of the supply chains. And if we zoom in again in the company itself, inside our company or in our organizations, it can have as a micro perspective. Somewhat the supply chain, we may have supply chain division or department inside our company, which their functionality will follow across a lot of departments, such as procurement activities, finance activities, in IT, in the procurement department and finance department. And also they will also need to collaborate with IT department, production, logistics, and even sales department or marketing. All of this is need to be done properly in order to achieve the company goals, which we can call it supported by their supply chain strategy. So the company goals, the company objective need to be supported by the supply chain strategy. And both inside the company, the supply chain function inside the company and outside the company need to maintain or manage three main flows of the supply chains, which including the material flow, or normally will be depicts as from the upper echelon to the lower echelon. But for nowadays, it doesn't always like this. Some materials also flow from the end customer up to the manufacturers. And also there is money flow, in which whenever there is a transaction on the products, they're normally in exchange with the money. And it's also have we in supply chain, they need to also maintain or manage the information flow properly, so that all those activities can be done in a flawless way. This is the illustration of supply chain models in a little bit more conventional way, where we are consider that supply chain is how to manage the flows of materials from the supplier networks and then need to be handled properly inside of our company or in our enterprise, which should be done in integrated way, including the sourcing, the logistics, and the operations. And then we will need to distribute our end products to the end customers. And all of those need to be supported by several things, like we need to have a good relationship management upstream and then downstream, with the proper information, product, service, financial, and knowledge flows. And it also need to be supported by the capability of the company, including capacity, information management, core competency, the capitals, and the human resources. By seeing the example from those previous slides, you may also already have the illustration about the definition of the supply chains. Here I tried to provide several textbook definitions available in the literature. First one from the main reference that we are using, Bowersox et al. in his book, in their book, they write that supply chain management is a process. It's a set of process, so it include a lot of process um, to use to effectively and efficiently integrate. So here, integrate suppliers. Here are all the entities involved in the supply chain: suppliers, manufacturers, distribution center, distributors, retailers. Okay, so all the party who are involved there should be integrated so that the products can be tangible, can be intangible, that is produced and distributed in the here. Another keyword: right quantity, right location, right time, in order to minimize the system-wide cost. So the cost should be minimized, but the consumer desired or the value proposition that decided by the consumer should be achieved. So those are the definition of supply chain. Another definition is from an organization that quite well known in the supply chain world, so-called Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals, in which the supply chain management means the planning and management of all activity involving in sourcing and procurement. So this is about the supplier conversion. So it is in your company to convert from the raw materials to the end products, and then all logistics. So this will be the distribution activities. And it is important to include the coordination and collaborations. This is the same keyword being used previously for the partners, including suppliers, intermediaries, third-party service provider, and also consumers. In a sense, supply chain management integrates supply and demand within a cross company. Okay, the last one I took from the book published by Professor Cincy Levy, one of the well-known expert in supply chain, and mentioned that supply chain management is a set of approaches utilized to integrate, another keyword similar with the previous one. Integrate what? Integrate all parties, including supplier, manufacturer, warehouse, and store, so that the merchandise, or this is what we can call also product can be produced, distributed in the right quantity, right location, and right time, minimize system-wide cost, and satisfy service level. So quite similar with the one that we introduced earlier at the first time. Okay, so now we talk about the supply chain value proposition. It is mostly about what can supply chain management or a good supply chain management offer, so that we need to use it. Okay, what kind of value it can create for our company or for the supply chain organization in a whole. Okay, because we want to minimize the system-wide cost. Okay, to summarize that, this framework of value creation by supply chain, in this book that we use as a main reference, we sometimes call it as the abbreviation of EERS, or it stands for effectiveness, efficiency, relevancy, and sustainability. So basically, supply chain is not only about minimize the cost, but also providing desired service objective. Okay, and it's a little bit more complex, since the service objective perhaps it's a little sometimes different with the cost minimization functions. Okay, so let's take an example what kind of EERS or what kind of value propositions that we can categorize into this one of these, or sometimes combination of EERS. Let's say you provide, you can create, or we can say that we create service excellency through supply chain. a good supply chain management. So this will belong to the value proposition of effectiveness. Okay, effective in providing a good service excellence, and of course cost minimization and avoidance of broken products is called efficiency. And then the value generation, it means like some customer value our product differently to each other, so we need to really give the correct value that can be appreciated uh, uh, appreciated by the customer appropriately. So the relevancy is necessary there. And then the last one, it's quite popular in the value for supply chain nowadays, is how it can generate a continuous improvement or a sustained environment, and this will belong to sustainability. Okay, we know that the environment in the industry is always changing. So high performance supply chain and logistics system need to be adaptive to in these changes. Okay, so there are two type of changes we can categorize here. It's changes of the supply chain based on the consumer requirements, and then the technology adaptations. The first one regarding the consumer requirements, there are 5 consumer changes that have huge potential to disrupt the supply chain. First is the want now mentality. So for example, like previously, it is normal to receive products that you buy online with a lead time about like 1 week or 2 weeks, depend on the location of the supplier. But nowadays, every customer that want to buy online want their products delivered as soon as possible. That's just one example of want it now mentality. And then another is like the personalizations. So everyone is unique, so they may have their different tastes, different personal requests on the demands to the products. And then generational preferences. So we know that in each generation they have their own characteristics. So like baby boomer generation may have different preferences on the products with the millennials or the generation Z or generation Alpha. And omnichannel shopping is nowadays already seen as a very disruptive and then make the supply chain really need to be adapted in order to apply this omnichannel shopping. And then there is a lot of demand on the aging consumer needs, so this can be also the industrial disruption. And then regarding technology adaptation, we know that technology is always changing, always improving. So here are some lists of technology that already and also have the potential to disrupt the supply chain management further. Such autonomous vehicle, Internet of Things, and then artificial intelligence, sharing economy, movement in the IT, like have Uber, have Airbnb, something like that, and 3D printings and big data and analytics. A major enabler of supply chain planning and execution is, we can call it information and technology. So, supply chain technology and information systems initiate activities and track informations regarding process, facilitate information sharing, and both within the firm and between supply chain partners. And it can also assist in management oversight and also the decision making. So Comprehensive information systems can be a combinations of a comprehensive information system can be a combination of transaction systems, decision supports, and communication component. So here we summarize some generic supply chain information systems, which are can thread of linking logistical activity into integrated process. So the integration can be built into 4 levels of functionality. Number 1 is the transaction systems that consists as the system to manage order management, inventory management, order selection, and shipping, pricing, and also the customer inquiry. So okay, here. Another one, if you have the good foundation already for this transaction system, you may need management control systems which control the financial costs and asset measurement, customer service measurement, productivity measurement, and quality measurements. Also, then you may need also the decision analysis systems, which consists of systems that help you to decide, create tactical decisions such as vehicle routing and scheduling, inventory level and management, network facility location and integration, and also vertical integration and third-party sourcings. And on top of that, we also need the strategic planning systems, which help to analyze the strategic alliance formulations, develop the refinement of supply chain capability and opportunity, and also profit-based customer relationship management. Those supply chain information systems can also be depicted in terms of their usage, decision characteristics, and justifications. Here, as you can see that, for example, strategic planning systems normally characterized by a system that can help you to handle high risk decisions and also have extensive options. This decision is necessary because the justification of it can help the firm or the company to gain competitive advantage in the futures or in the long terms. Another examples in extremes like transaction systems normally is characterized as a high hardware and software system cost. It's a efficiency-driven activity focus, and also it normally have a structured training for a large number of users. And the justification of the ability of the uh, ability or the necessary of this system is to fulfill the competitive qualification of your supply chain. So normally it's a norm system that you already should have now in this supply chain. So you need to have it in order to qualify, not yet competitive, but at least qualified to take up for the challenge. Now we talk more on the comprehensive supply chain information system initiatives. Yeah, it can a supply chain information systems. It can initiate, monitor, and assist decision making, also including reporting on the activities required for completion of supply chain operation planning. So here in these textbooks that we are using, the major system modules and the interface of this SCIS is depicted as follow. So we will have normally something called enterprise resources planning, which is used to help integrate the supply chain and the operations planning, and all the like all the activities involved in the supply chains. So it consists of 3 main functional system, which to help with the enterprise integration and administrations, and then help with the planning and monitoring, and also the operational itself. All of them will be connected with the financial and operations reporting. Okay, well, actually, enterprise integration and administrations are ERP modules that it doesn't specifically design for the supply chain operation. However, since supply chain operation do have substantial interaction with this ERP component, so here we can see that the illustration of major enterprise integration and administration component, which consists of typically consists of general administration system, account receivable, account payable, the function, financial, inventory and accounting, general ledger, and then human resources. Modules like enterprise operation system components uh, include the SEIS modules, which require to support day-to-day supply chain operations. And this figure illustrates the specific modules including customer relationship, which may have several sets of functionalities like customer master database, forecastings, and then order management systems. And as you can see, this here is really important, and we will discuss it again later. And then we also have the module of logistics, manufacturing, purchasing, and inventory deployment. Okay, and then the enterprise planning and monitorings are the process and technology that facilitates exchange of planning and coordinating informations both between the firm and in the firm, within the firm, and between the supply chain partner. So uh, here's illustrate the major enterprise planning and monitoring modules. The module consists of sales and operation planning, and supply chain visibility and event management. Later, we will also talk more on the sales and operation plannings. Okay, before we go further, we will talk about logistics. So, logistics, especially in the supply chain. In logistics management especially is the process and activities that create value, which focus on the design and administration of system to control the timing and geographical positioning of products. It can be in terms of raw materials, work in progress, work in process product, finished inventory, and the goal is to have the lowest total cost of these activities. And every firm has the combination of activities regarding to their logistics management. But it can normally be categorized into inventory management, transportation management, warehousing, and integrating it through their facility networks. And in order to have supply chain value propositions that along with the desired outcome, get along with the desired outcome, so an integrated logistics service and synchronization between those services is necessary. So logistics should be managed and then as an integrated effort to achieve the customer location at the customer satisfaction at the lowest cost. So these frameworks from Professor Chopra depicts how important logistics in supply chains. So here we have competitive strategy in which in order to stay relevant, to achieve their goals, firm's goals, or company goals, or company objective, they should have a competitive strategy that they will use to stay competitive in the market. And in order to achieve this, the company should have their apply their supply chain strategy. For example, if you want to have like your company want to have the cheap price strategy, it means that in order to compete in the market, you want to have a cheap price. So you should have a supply chain strategy that support toward efficiency. And in order to have this efficiency, your supply chain structure is well designed so that these two category of driver, which consists of 6 a component, should be get along with those efficiency strategy. Here, as you can see, the naming is logistical driver is for these 3 component or 3 driver: facility, inventory, and transportation. It is very important if you select the correct strategy, you should also implement those strategy correctly in these particular drivers. For example, let me give example. If you want to have an efficiency, so the transportation option that you need to choose is perhaps should be the most efficient one. So in the case that you have the option of using, for example, sea transportation versus let's say air transportation, normally sea will be cheaper, it will be more cost efficient. However, if your supply chain strategy is toward responsiveness, okay, you want, let's say, the products deliver fast in no time, so the selection of transportation driver, which is logistical driver, should be more tend to using air transportation despite the price. Okay, so it's like normally they will also have a trade-off between this selection of strategy. Okay, yeah, so as mentioned earlier, in order to realize the maximum benefit of logistics, the activities in the supply chain should be integrated. Okay, so um, here is an example of several work in logistics, so that with the integrations in between these works would have an integrated logistics management that will have chance to be a better supply chain. Okay, so here some category of logistics works such as order processing, inventory, transportation, warehousing, material handling and packaging, and facility network designs. So at the end of the day, the supply chain goals, along with the minimization of the cost, is to satisfy the customer needs. But here we can call it to accommodate the customer demand as well. So now the question is, who is the customer actually? If you talk about supply chain, we here have the picture of the general um, party being involved in the supply chain. So which one is, who is actually the customer? It's clear here, it's written the customer is the one that at the end of the chain. However, if you talk about perspective of that will be the perspective of total supply chains. The end customer, the end user of your product will be your end customer. Okay, but the one that use the products in the market at the end of the chain, yeah, it's called customer. But in the perspective of a specific firm within the supply chain, okay, here this firm, all is this firm. So for example, if you took the manufacturer, the intermediate organization that exists to use their products will be their customer, right? So, and in practice, the customer of the manufacturer is the wholesaler that buy their products. Or in the perspective of the supplier, the user, intermediate customer in the organizations, such as the one that use their product is their customer. However, for a logistic manager, Logistic handle the timing and geographical position of this, right? This can be raw material, can be finished products. So in their perspective, any delivery locations or requested delivery or pickup for their transportation use belong to their customers. Okay. So knowing that, understood what the customer needs is a requirement. It is even more basic than the product and service that your firm offer. So you need to understand what your customer needs. So different customer may have different needs and requirement. It really depends. So your product and services, it will become meaningful only when the available and a position of the products will be along with the customer perspective. So there are several discrepancies here. We are introduced by three discrepancies that you need to overcome to enable a good exchange of goods and services. So the discrepancy or the gap can be referred to the fact that the locations of the production activity and the location of the consumer need is seldom the same. So normally you will need to have a transportation function to bridging the gap or discrepancy. And then the time also, the time they produce the product and the time the customer consume the product might have the discrepancy. So you may have an inventory to handle that one and stuff. And discrepancy about quantity and assortment refers to sometimes mismatch between the demand and the supply. Can be oversupply, can be oversupply, can be not enough to supply, or cannot fulfill all the demand. So and then normally customer will seek small quantity but wide variety. Meanwhile, the firm specialize if they want to produce efficiently, they need to produce in large quantities but limited number of variations. So at the end of the day, having an optimized supply chain decision is very difficult because there is a lot of things need to be done right. Okay, right in the correct price, correct amount, correct time, correct place, and correct quality. Talk about the accommodating the customer needs can be also seen as how to offer a good customer service. Okay, so here is the list of fundamental element of a good customer service. First, we can call it an availability. Second will be the operational performance, and then last one is the service reliability. Here we have all the indicators for all these customer service elements. Okay, there is several frameworks that can be used to measure the quality of service offered by a firm. And here in particular, I'm not going to discuss in detail, but here is one very famous framework to measure how good is your service, the quality, especially the quality of your service. ServQuals is a tool to interpret the customer satisfactions. So it already been used in many and various type of industry. And if you can see in the right, so it's somehow measured something called perceived or service quality based on the expectation and the perception of these five-dimensional latent factors. Okay, so the tools that can be used to measure this, we can use some multivariate analysis or path analysis techniques, so-called structural equation models. Okay, so it is an advanced statistical approach designed to describe causal relationship between latent variables or hidden constructs that is commonly used in the behavioral studies. Okay, throughout the supply chain, because we already talked about it depends. The customer is in this perspective of what, right? And also, if we talk about the gap between the expectation and the perceived, either performance, actual performance, and performance standard, we can also use the same approach previously, service quality, for each of these gap. Okay, and beyond customer accommodation in the supply chain, the research or the tools that we talked about earlier is to measure the factors and phenomena for human behavior. However, human behavior itself is complex. So if you are interested on these topics, you can explore the implementation of a SAM or structural equation models in the area of supply chain management, in which here is some literature review that I happened to found in during the preparation of this slide. Now we talk about the modeling part or the design process, engineering design process of this supply chain management. So previously we talked all the basic stuff related to supply chain, including how we need to satisfy the customer, accommodate the customer requirement. But the all the activities or the management within the organizations involve making decisions, and in the engineering approach, one of the fundamental or most used tools in engineering to design and then in order to have a decision making process is creating models. Models in here is supply chain models can be a simplified representation or abstraction of real world supply chain systems. And as a previous researcher mentions, that models normally an idealized representation, so it would not be able to represent a very much in details application in the real world situations. And so models also can be defined as a structure which purposely built to exhibit features and characteristics of an objects. For example, if you want to analyze the supply chains, you will need to specifically build models that represent those supply chains. Models can be concrete or can be intangible. Like in the operation research field of view, it's normally called abstract models. So the essentials now, we will talk a lot about mathematical modelings to represent the supply chains phenomena. The essential features of mathematical models, especially in operation research, is that it normally involves a set of mathematical relationships such as equation, inequality, logical dependency that responds to like very simplified real world application or constraints. Okay. And the last one here is that in so as a industrial engineering, system engineering, or industrial system designs, these disciplines normally focus designing, planning, and managing complex systems using engineering-based approach, in which one of them is creating the models. And in most mathematical engineering disciplines, there are several stages need to be involved in determining our design process or engineering process. First, we need to define the problems and then create the conceptual and then make it in more detail and then create the design specification as the solutions or as the model for the implementations. Models, if you see these pictures, they will have several inputs and then they will generate outputs. As you can see here, normally we in an engineering approach create a model of real world systems in order to assist us to make decisions. Okay, if you are arrived at this slide, it means you already either skip a lot of description or an explanation, or you already follow all the presentations that I made for these topics. If you are interested on having more, you may have to, you can start with these several study questions. If you are interested on contact me, you can put several comments in this video that I will upload in YouTube, or you can contact me using my emails. Okay, so thank you very much for listening this session 1. Please find another topics related to this or the next sessions also. Thank you.